let's bang the gavel. Well, go ahead. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the joint meeting between the POA and the city. Another gala event, I think, is going to be. We're starting the meeting at 6:03.
Okay, POA will call this session in order at 6:03.
Yes, sir.
Instead of asking somebody to do the invocation, I'm going to ask everybody if they would stand for a moment and perhaps just offer a couple of extra prayers for the wife of our mayor, Larry Green. Sparrow has been quite ill for over a month now, and hopefully she's going to be doing better. So if you don't mind standing for a moment, please. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone like to start the salute to the flag? Jack, would you like to do that? Hand over to Mark. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Bonner.
Here.
Councilmember Castillo.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz.
Here.
Absent from tonight's meeting is Mayor Green.
Okay, Harmony, would you like to do a roll call for the POA?
Yes, sir. Director Nathan.
Here.
Director Berringham.
Here.
Director Odell.
Here.
Director Poland.
Here.
President Welty.
Here.
Vice President Corbett.
May I have a approval of the agenda by the City Council, please?
I move a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. We're now moving on to public comments, and I believe our city clerk has her voice back.
I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any person wishing to address the City Council and Board of Directors on any matter on this agenda is asked to complete a speaker request form available on the back counter. The completed form is to be submitted to the City Clerk prior to an individual being heard by the City Council and Board of Directors. The City Council has adopted a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you are commenting on the agenda item, your comments will be heard at the time that particular item is scheduled on the agenda. No comments on any item not on this agenda will be taken at this special meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Darcy Burke.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Darcy Burke, and I'm the Director for Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District. I just wanted to give you a couple of updates. And first and foremost, I want to say that we, under Councilmember Bonner's direction, we've been meeting regularly once a month, both the city, the POA, and actually the Water District. And I think those discussions have been going very well, and I'm very encouraged by the cooperation. And I think this meeting is just another demonstration of that. For the Water District, you'll actually be getting your water quality reports in your mailbox soon. These are mandated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and as a result, they're actually written in regulatory speak, which is mandated. But there's also some information in there that tries to explain your drinking water and some of the other services that are available through the Water District. So I would encourage you to read it when you get it, and if you have any questions, either call the district or I'm happy to answer them. And finally, like most organizations, it's budget time, and the Water District's also going to be considering a budget in the next month, and that may include water rate increases. It will not at this time include sewer rate increases, but due to a number of regulatory mandates, we may have to adjust the rates for our residential and our commercial users. And I'm happy to discuss when those rates are finalized with anybody that would like to have more information or to know about the RARE program, which also provides financial assistance to those that are eligible. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Art Feemister.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your time, and I want to thank you all for doing this and also for going above and beyond to announce it. It was in the Friday flyer, it was on emails. The POA took out a quarter-page ad on the Friday flyer announcing this meeting, the RFID meeting. That's a first, so you all kept your word, and the POA did a great job on that, so thank you. And if anybody didn't know about tonight, I don't know what else to tell them. You've done everything you can, so thank you for that. Now, what I just want to just throw out to you is just some food for thought. That's all it is. It's regarding one of my favorite subjects, the Marine Patrol, but in a good way tonight. So as we move forward, at least from the POA standpoint, they're aware of it. The city may not be that we hired our own in-house captain of the Marine Patrol, and I believe, and I'm not going to speak for the POA, but the goal, I think, is to maybe bring that in-house and have it all POA directly staffed. If and when that does happen, I'd like everybody here to consider maybe having more of a marine public safety type of organization where the POA still runs it, but there's more involvement from the city. And what I mean by that, if two boats ran into each other right now and there's people in the water that were unconscious or unable to get out because of injuries, someone got hit by a prop that's laying in the water, one of these little planes crashes, whatever, people are going to dial 911, Riverside County Fire is going to go, that's great, let us know when you get to shore, because nothing we can do for you, and that's true. We don't have a boat. They can drag one out from maybe headquarters somewhere and bring it down, but people are going to die. So I don't think we do. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but I don't think there's any kind of joint training with public safety, fire, and EMS, and our Marine Patrol. And doing it right now, in all due respect, would be kind of a waste because the 50 to 75% turnover in Marine Patrol operators just be wasting training money. But as we get people on that are hopefully going to be here longer, better paid, and what have you, that they're trained, number one, as basically life-saving. They can go in the water, swim themselves to keep themselves above float, get to someone, they understand if someone's screaming like that, you don't try and get them, you throw them something, basic stuff, basic first aid. If they're bleeding out from getting hit by a propeller or something, they can stop the bleeding, just some basic stuff. On Sunday, Cal Fire came in with the helicopter at Eastport and landed there a number of times to pick up water with the hose came down there. There were nothing down there shutting that down. That would be nice if Cal Fire could call the POA and say, we've got a helo inbound to eastbound to Eastport to pick up water for the next hour. They're going to be coming down. We'd like you to shut down that area because when they drop, they come down and then they take off and head up. And there's a video of it on Facebook, something along those lines. Someone calls 911 and say, we just collided. What do we do? 911 will call the Marine Patrol or Canyon Lake Forest and tell them, okay, you're going to have a Marine Patrol unit's going to go to Fire Station 60 to the beach across from that, pick up the firefighters and paramedic. You're going to take them out or stage at Holiday Harbor. Just some coordination. Doesn't mean they're firefighters, but some way to bring it together. And anybody that says, oh, that could never happen, couldn't find the photo in time tonight, but when we first moved in here, there was a boat ran up onto the dock at the end of Worldway Court. He was arrested for BUI, boating under the influence. He claims the steering broke, whatever, but he literally went up, perfect shot actually, went right up on the dock in between the two poles. The bow of his boat hit the boat that was in the dock there and stopped it. I took the picture of it. If that had been literally 1 degree more on the steering wheel, just like that, he would have been into a seawall, might have been ejected through the windshield, and there would have been the water. In this case, the firefighters came down and went to the dock and took them off and were able to save them. If they're in the water floating around, what are the firefighters going to do? So I just want to throw that thought out to you as we get to that level. Maybe we can look at doing some combined training and kind of tie it in together, just like the golf cart did at the POA. That was a great example there. So
Art,
thank you.
I don't want to be rude. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Next, we have, I'm sorry, I'm not sure of the first name, but last name is Hall. Is it Doug? Okay.
Good evening. A couple of points I wanted to bring up. One is kind of an old thing of mine. About 5 years ago, I had an issue where some kids were driving a golf cart. We're talking kids somewhere between 12 and 14, 15 years old. pulled out in front of me, I almost hit him. This is an ongoing scenario. I just almost hit another one here just a couple weeks ago. And the problem is that you don't want to see something like that happen, but at the same time, who's going to be responsible for that? Even though those kids aren't supposed to be out there driving it, I'm going to be on the hook because someone's coming after me. And then the POA is going to be on the hook too. There's going to be litigation that will come up against POA if one of these kids gets hurt. And I don't know what patrol is doing. I've seen them time and time again. They see these kids 12, 13, 14 years old driving the golf cart, and patrol just goes right on past them. Just doesn't even give them another look. I mean, if they look like they're under 18 years old, patrol should be checking these kids out. I mean, we've got all, as members of POA, we've all got huge liability here if something happens to these kids driving the cart. And it's not going to be a good thing. It's just getting worse and worse. More and more kids are driving. And I'm sure every single person here on the board and the city council has seen it. Underage kids driving a golf cart. POA rules stipulate they must have a driver's license. And I guarantee you, an awful lot of them do not. And someone's going to get hurt, and there's going to be lawsuits up the wazoo. And when you see these kids weaving out, in and out, playing dodgeball, playing dodge with cars. And it's crazy. It's really out of control on that. And it just, I really want to know what POA is doing about it. The other thing is coming into the POA, into the Canyon Lake, I don't know how many times I get behind someone and they hand out a pass. And the guard at the gate takes pass, does his little infrared check with it or whatever, and hands it back to him and go, why are the IDs not looked at to make sure that matches the person on the pass? They're not. They're not looked at. I've sat behind, I came in twice today. Both times got behind people that were going through, handed the pass, and guess what? They did a little thing like that, and boom. No ID was exchanged. I'm close enough. I can see well enough. No ID was exchanged. So who's coming into the gates here? We don't know. No. What are we paying for? We're paying security a lot of money here. And I know we only get so many services because we only pay whatever it is. But I know these things are on the agenda. Traffic scenarios with the kids driving the golf carts and checking IDs at the gate. Those are two mainstay things I'm sure that are on the contract. And neither one of them are happening.
I'm sorry, this is not the most popular part of the meeting, but I have to limit your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Leanne Nye.
Hello, my name's Leanne. I just moved here in June, and I was reading the paper about the fire incidents and the fire crisis, and I'm not about how we're funding and things like that, and I don't know how you guys do things here. Like I said, I'm new, but I just had some thoughts on the idea. I was thinking over in Norco, there is a prison that does fire, and I was thinking maybe it could be contracted for them a little bit cheaper or to add in to help for our safety here. They do fire camps there for prisoners, and it'd be a good way to rehabilitate and let them be part of a community. That's all.
Thank you.
Next, we have Frank Whittle.
My neighbor.
My name is Frank Whittle. I lived on Strawberry Lane off of Longhorn for 15 years. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I bought on Canyon Lake South, downsized, 2,300 square foot, and I cannot believe, and I've been in Canyon Lake 17 years, that we got an Ontario racetrack between the corner of Sparkles and down the Village Way. And if anybody doubts me, come sit in my front yard. I got a beautiful letter that I wrote and I give to the committee clear back in October of 17. And for 8 months, I give the letter I passed out everywhere and said, we have a dangerous problem here and somebody's going to get killed at Village Way. If you're acquainted with that, you know very well the boat trailers come down from the Sparkles down and swing into the center. My neighbors and all, I got to go out with an orange flag and stop the traffic for my neighbors, my friends and all to get out on Canyon Lake. Now let me say this. This has gone on for over 2 years, and let me tell you, after 8 months of warning to everybody, let me tell you, I was coming around the blind curve at Sparkles with my blinkers on. I began to turn onto my driveway at 22388 Canyon Lake, and I was rear-ended. I thought I was dead. And the driver's little girl in her car got her head injured. Now, 18 months later, and with all the notices, still no signs, no warnings at Village Way and Sparkles Blind Curve, only the racetrack of 35 miles per hour. And Mr. Gordon, head of security, and I complained to Nago, Mike, etc. in the years past. He is a great man, but I know the problem, that he is governed by the higher-ups. I know he stopped at my house, we talked about it, etc., but I know technically his hands are tied. Now I'm going to try to make this short. 15 years I drove down Longhorn. I was shocked the other day. I come to the stables where the stop sign's been for 15 years. What do I see? I see flashing red lights on the stop sign. Why, in 15 years, you do not have traffic on Longhorn like you have on Canyon Lake South? You go to the main gate. You come to the golf cart crossing. You can see it a mile away. And yet, here's flashing lights stopping the traffic for the golf carts. You go to the west gate, and about 3, 4, or 5 blocks out, 25 miles an hour. You go to all the gates, 25 miles an hour. We had a concert a week and a half ago with over 100 cars in the parking lot, and what did they do? They come down Village Way to make their left turn, and then you got the cars coming up. But here is the big problem. As those boats come down from Sparkles, they hit the center lane. My neighbors and all, or those turning from Village Way, they will turn into the center lane. So what do? I cannot believe, but you have had so many close calls, head-on wrecks in the center lane. Now, I will just give you my last example, and I'll shut up. The last example is for me or any of my friends to pull out of my driveway. They had to, number one, they got the golf cart lane, which technically is safety, but then they got the 35-mile lane. So when my friends and all of my neighbors pull out of their driveway, they got to look both ways in their mirrors, and then they dive to the center lane, and they stop to make sure nobody's coming from the right. But that's the problem. As they dive to the center lane, here comes a boat, trailer, and a car coming down, and they meet head-on. So what I'm saying, friends, at Village Way, unless Canyon Lake is going to have some mighty big problems, and I can't believe I didn't get killed, but you have that blind curve at Sparkles, no warning, no nothing. And the point I'm getting at, at Village Way. I'm not saying a stop sign should be there, but there should be warning signs. It should not be a 35-mile-an-hour zone, maybe 25 like you have in front of the main gates, the golf course, etc.
Thank you, Frank.
Friends,
We're coming on quite a bit of time here.
If you want to save lives, do something at Village Way. And I want to thank all of you members.
Thank you for your concern.
Thanks, Dale.
Next, we have Rita Benlin.
Thank you for taking the time. Most of you know me. Of course, I'm on a medical leave right now from the county behavioral health boards. And so, as most of you probably that remember me, we've been here since '74 and probably built most of the homes that you're looking at. But anyway, just to get to my point, the reason I'm here is because I have had a year detention from the pool because I was caught talking about the Bible. I was explained the employees do not like me. I said, okay. So they said in July I can ask for permission to use the pool and other facilities. So that's my complaint. As Mr. Whittle knows me well, I think I should be able to say what I want at the pool without upsetting people. And I'm sorry if someone got upset because I used the Bible. And it wasn't in my hand, it was on a tablet. So let me know when I'm allowed to get back into my pool that I've seen grow up here. My children, and I have, by the way, I have 7 children, 18 grandchildren, 10 great-grandchildren, and my history goes back in this little area to 1879. So if you want to talk history, I am also a community vocational teacher. I am also a very strong woman from Brooklyn, New York. I'm sorry, I'm direct. And I know Sharon Bryce, thank God for her, and your New York publisher from Friday Flyer, and most of you know me for what I am. And by God, I'm not going to let this continue in the United States of America. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Wamsley.
Well, one thing I just wanted to bring up with reference to taxes. At the present time, everybody in this room pays taxes to Riverside County Flood Control. And we spent the past couple of months going over everything, and we're making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that there be no increase whatsoever in our taxes. And as far as I know, everybody in my position, when I serve as a commissioner there, we have 5 of them, and everybody is supporting this to no tax increase for everybody. That includes everybody in our city and throughout Riverside County. So I think the supervisors will support that. They'll be voting on it in the next couple of weeks, and as everything that I've been able to gain, I think that's going to go that way. Other than that, I don't know where it's appropriate. I'll ask the mayor, would it be appropriate to upgrade Larry's situation or not?
No, that would be fine, Jack. I'm sure everybody would like to know what's going on.
I just talked to Larry Green about an hour ago, and Saturday they had to quit the chemo because the operation on her back, the chemo had forced that to reopen. So they stopped the chemo. She is trying to work, or she and of course the doctors and everybody is trying to work on trying to stop that operation wound, I'll put it, for the lack of knowledge. And hopefully they'll be successful. Larry tells me that at this point, it looks like he's going to be bringing her home last part of this week. They've done about everything they can do. Not a good situation, but she's hanging in there and has for a month, and it's been tough. So I hope everybody, like you say, had a prayer for her, and I hope it's successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ted Horton.
Thank you. I'll be brief, although not necessarily sweet. I sent a list of 25 items that I hope that you guys will take some consideration of for working on jointly. That's pretty expensive. My wife said, no, Ted, one. So my one is a zip code for Canyon Lake exclusively, and it would take everyone pulling out all stops, if at all possible, to get us that zip code. I think you'll immediately see an improved self-image if we had our own zip code. I think you'll immediately see some regional identity that is improved, and in particular, I believe that our property values will be improved when we aren't mixing our sales with Menifee and with Quail Valley, so that our property values will improve with that. It also would assure that any tax dollars from our sales within Canyon Lake do go to Canyon Lake, because I think some are now probably getting mixed up and going to Menifee by virtue of the zip code that we use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruben Flores.
Good evening, everyone. Great to see you all. Just have a couple of items to go over real quick. First, it's great to see the City Council and the POA working together. For years, it's been the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing kind of thing, so this is great to see. There's a lot of issues that need to be ironed out within the city, and it's work in progress, so congratulations to that. Second is, as most of you know, I've been reporting and volunteering my time over the last 7 years reporting crime and public safety issues to residents from my Facebook page. So, but I'm kind of stepping away from that right now for another endeavor, but crime and vandalism is still going on. So what we need, and I was going to ask, and this is a city side, if we can get the Sheriff's Department to start publishing a list of incidents going on, because if residents don't know what's going on, the status quo remains. Now, Councilman Castillo, we've been questioning the lieutenant, but it's like pulling teeth, right, at the meetings. So if you can get some going with that, that'd be great. And the last thing is, if you can get an update on what's going on with Menifee's Police Department. I know you guys have kind of been talking with them to see if we can join them or something like that, but we definitely need more police presence. So those are just kind of things I just wanted to add. And again, congratulations on the joint meetings.
Thank you.
Joe Waschel.
That was close. I want to talk about security, which is the way I read it here as part of the agenda. I finally, had relatives in town, I finally able to read the Friday flyer today. And the part regarding our fire department, I thought was absolutely horrible. We have increased 79%. Now, if you break that down, it's really compounded about 12% a year over a 6-year period. It'll double. And I think we went into this thing about 5 years ago. I remember sitting out there by the main gate, waving a sign up and down, support, I think it was Proposition M, to put the 3.95 or 6 utility tax in. I supported it entirely, and I wanted to save this city. And the idea was that we were going to have time to work things out. Now, shortly after that, we closed Station 60, which we had never promised in this proposition that we would keep it open. A lot of people thought we did, but we didn't. Now, we're going up at 12% a year to double this thing in 6 years. And that is absolutely ridiculous. We should have been working on this thing the last 5 years as of what we're doing. How it got to where it is now, I have no idea. We're going to give them now a 30, cut out one captain or however it is, and give them I think we're at $30,000 increase. We've got to do something. And I hate to say it, I know everybody in here will hate me, but if we have to close 60 again, then damn it, we have to do it. But we have to solve the problem. And the city council, as far as I'm concerned, I know 3 of you, 2 of you particularly are very new here, but we've gone to sleep on this thing. And I know the city managers knew, but we've gone to sleep on it, and we have to do something. And we have to dig our heels in and say, hey, we cannot do this. What are we losing, 600 and some odd thousand a year in about 5-6 years? We're bankrupt. So please, let's get tough on this thing and dig in and either figure a way out. We've had 5 or 6 years. We're going to do the joint thing here and the joint thing there, and we're going to do this, and we haven't done one single thing. So I just want to say, let's do something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, I have John Haas.
John, the button.
Okay, hold it down.
No, you're good. It's red now, so you're good.
Okay. I live on Canyon Club Drive, and we're very close to the causeway where they have that bridge where boats go under and such. And most everybody who goes under it cranks up their radio and blasts it, which is fine. But what I'm having a problem with is occasionally there's some people who sort of lay out there with their boat, and they have some really profane music on, which I don't like the music, I don't like the words, and I'm just wondering, what do we do when that happens?
Let me just comment, is they encourage you to call patrol. Just call. That's the first. If all the members call, then we know, and then we can do something about it. That's the first thing.
So the patrol, not the police?
Generally patrol, but you can call the police too. There are noise ordinances.
Okay, so, okay. So just call the police, call the patrol, and they'll come out and I mean, you're talking about the water patrol, right? Marine patrol. Now, how do you call them?
After the meeting, we'll talk.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
I have no more cards.
Okay, thank you. Well, now we're going to go to open discussion items. We're going to have a presentation by our city manager on public safety.
Okay, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, Mr. President, members of the board, good evening. I'd like to start this evening by just giving a brief overview of the public safety services provided by the city. There we go. So as most of you know, I'm sure, the city of Canyon Lake contracts with the county of Riverside for police services through Riverside County Sheriff's Department and for fire protection services through the county, which has a contract with CAL FIRE. So it's the CAL FIRE men and women who are actually physically providing the service to us. On the police side, currently our contract with the county is for one deputy sheriff position, 24/7 coverage, one deputy position, and of course all of the support services that come along with that. On the fire side, as I'm sure you know, the station itself is owned by the POA. The city has a lease with the POA for $1 a year, which I understand that we're behind on for use of the fire station. And the city owns the engine. So we pay the county to staff that one engine. The staffing levels for that engine are here. We recently switched. This used to be 3 captains, so a captain was on shift at all times. We recently made a staffing change where there's 1 captain, and when that captain's off shift, the next highest ranking person on shift is in charge. And we brought in 2 firefighter too. So the number of personnel has remained the same. We're just looking at a difference in rank. On the police side, this contract is now costing the city $1.78 million this coming fiscal year. Again, that's for just 1 deputy, 24/7. On the fire side, the estimate from the county for this next fiscal year is $2.26 million. Again, that's just to staff 1 fire engine. So the challenge the city is facing is that our public safety costs have been really skyrocketing the past few years, and to no fault of the city's. No decisions the city has made have led to these increases. The general fund budget this coming fiscal year is estimated to be $5,186,725. Expenditures, $5,855,059, which means we're running a deficit of about $668,334. This is our expenditures by department. I'd like to just point out that down here at the bottom, you'll see this $4.2 million is what we project to spend on public safety next fiscal year. And everything else the city does, city council, city attorney, city manager, city clerk, finance, building and safety, planning, public works, special enforcement, which are our code enforcement officers, everything else totals just 1.6 million. So we're very heavy in public safety. When you look at public safety as a percentage of our general fund expenditures, you'll see it's 71.75%. However, remember, we're running a deficit. So as a percentage of revenues, we're spending 81% of all of our general fund revenues on public safety. This is another way to look at it here. The gray here is public safety budget. Here's our general government budget and our development services budget here. So how do we get there? Our public safety costs have been skyrocketing. Animal control has pretty much stayed consistent. It goes up and down, but pretty much stays within the same range. Police and fire have gone up exponentially. Just in the last 6 years, our police budget has increased 41%. So we're seeing cost increase of $517,566 in the last 6 years. And again, that's for the same 1 deputy sheriff position. On the fire side, it's even more dramatic. And there's a lot going on here, so let me kind of lead you through it real quick. 2015, 2016, you'll see the number dropped. That's because this is the year the fire station closed. This is interesting because during this year, during part of the year, we weren't paying anything, and the county was sending in services from Lake Elsinore and Menifee. Of course, that didn't sit too well with Lake Elsinore and Menifee because they felt that they were paying for our services. And so a deal was struck, and you'll see in fiscal year 16 and 17, this 1.1 million figure here. What happened that year is that the station stayed closed, and we were receiving services. Engines would come in from Lake Elsinore and Menifee, and we were paying Lake Elsinore and Menifee for those services. And when we were doing that, our costs were a little over $1.1 million. In fiscal year 2017, 2018, the fire station reopened, but we stayed with we paid for 2 people on the engine. The county had since, back here required that everyone go to at least 3 on an engine, which is a big reason for our huge cost increase. The deal that was struck with the county to reopen the station was that the county would pay for that extra firefighter this fiscal year, and then the city would start incurring the costs. And so that's why you see such a big jump between fiscal year 2017-18 and fiscal year 2018-19. So in fiscal year 2018-2019, the fire station was open that year, and we were paying for 3 men on the engine. So this right here is I crossed out this 1.4 million figure because we want to take into account that we put that year when it reopened $118,000 into station repairs. So if you back out those repairs, the actual number for operating the station was 1.3 million. So I wanted to indicate that here. But so you can see that just in the past 5 years, we've had a 79% increase in what the city has had to pay for fire protection services. It's an increase of $996,000, and that's with the staffing change we just made to reduce the number of fire captains and increase firefighter 2s. Had we not made that change, this is what it would have looked like. We would have been looking at 2.354 million, and our cost over the last 5 years would have increased 86% instead of 79%. So police and fire combined, we're looking at an increase of about 1.6 million in this time frame. Again, 1.6 million is about what we spend on everything else other than public safety, and we've seen an increase in that amount in just the last 5-6 years. So as you might imagine, we've been pretty heavily looking into what our options might be. Our first step was, hey, maybe we can negotiate with the county, maybe we can figure out a way just for them to reduce the amount that they charge, and we definitely met a dead end there. The county contracts with CAL FIRE, so we have no ability to negotiate contracts, union contracts for the labor. That's all done in Sacramento. It kind of is what it is. We were pretty much told no opportunities there. We asked if we could revert to 2 on an engine, and that request was dead on arrival. That's just something the county and CAL FIRE are not even willing to consider. We asked about managing overtime because we've noticed that there's a significant amount of overtime, and sometimes you might have a firefighter 2 who's out, and the person filling that overtime spot might be a captain, and so you're paying overtime on captain pay. But again, we were told, oh, well, that's all part of the MOU that's negotiated in Sacramento. There's nothing we can do about that here locally. We asked about switching to a squad. What if we don't run a fire engine out of Station 60, but we run a medical squad with paramedics, since such a high percentage of our calls are medical? And we were told, no, we're not willing to consider that. On the police side, we said, okay, well, when looking at the types of activity and calls we have here in Canyon Lake, violent crime is very low. The kind of crime we typically have here are desk reports. Hey, someone broke in my car last night and took something out of it, and someone files a report the next day. Very seldom is there, hey, crime in progress, we need an armed deputy to respond right now. So is there a way to maybe share a deputy with surrounding areas and bring in CSOs, and have a robust volunteer police program here? Those are things that are being discussed. Past administrations have said absolutely not. With the new sheriff, the way the county contracts with cities is being looked at and evaluated. We hope to have their results by October, is what we're being told. So looking at a more tailored approach to Canyon Lake with the sheriff's department is still potentially an option, but something that is being looked at. We've thought about contracting with another city that has its own fire or police department. On the fire side, we approached Murrieta, who wasn't interested because we're not contiguous, and it would be logistically difficult for them to be sending engines and personnel over to Canyon Lake. Hemet, same thing, and also they're having recruiting problems in Hemet, so the concept of having to hire more people for Canyon Lake was not appealing to them. Corona, similar, they thought it's too far. We met with Calamasa. They were open to it, but said that it's too soon for them. They just started their fire department a couple years ago, and they're still getting their wrinkles ironed out. And they said if this was 5 years down the road, we'd consider it, but today it's too soon. On the police side, similarly, we've approached Murrieta and Hemet. Hemet's not interested primarily because of recruiting problems. Murrieta has said maybe we'd be open to it on the police side, but only if Wildemar joins you, so we have a contiguous situation. And Menifee has been open to the discussion, but their police department hasn't been launched yet, so they're still working on launching it, and they would want a year or two under their belt of operating before they'd consider taking on another city. But something to still consider in the future. We've talked about forming a joint powers authority with surrounding cities. That's something that could still be a possibility, but that's a path that's going to take a number of years. When you involve numerous cities and they all want to have lengthy studies done, I suspect by the time all these studies are done, if we haven't done something by then, we're going to be out of business. So. One option on the fire side might be to start a new Canyon Lake Fire Department. We could use one or any combination of volunteers, paid call, or interns being men and women who have put themselves through fire academies and are looking to become firefighters, and they need to get experience under the belts, so they would work under experienced people, but then we'd have a large group of new, young recruits getting experience. We're looking at that possibility. There are other cities that use these models that we're looking at currently. Another option to consider is to go back to a situation similar to what we had when Station 60 closed and engines were responding from Lake Elsinore and Menifee. Here on the map, you'll see the stations currently that service Canyon Lake. Right now, about half of the calls that occur in Canyon Lake are serviced by Station 94 in Lake Elsinore. Quite a few are serviced by Station 5 in Quail Valley. Of course, Station 60 currently responds to this area of the city and then responds out of the city this way. And sometimes Station 97 will also send engines in. During that year where Station 60 was closed and we were paying Lake Elsinore and Menifee, this was our cost, a little over $1.123 million. Projected cost for us for next year is this $2.259 million number right here. This is 101% difference right here, so that's a pretty sobering number there. This idea might work, especially when you consider that Station 5 in Quail Valley is slated to move south down to the intersection of Getz and Normandy, and that should be the new station here, should be open within 24 months, which would significantly reduce response times into the city, even including the Longhorn corridor. One concept we had was, and this makes sense when you look at the types of calls we have, it might make sense if we follow this model to beef up services by, instead of completely closing Station 60, having a side contract with AMR to place EMS services here. That might make sense because when you look at the type of calls we have, the vast majority of them are medical. This is a 2-year look. And this 2-year look, in 2018 we had only 6 residential structure fires. In 2017 only 4. So the 2-year average, not even 1% of the calls, 0.6% were structure fires. 81% were medical. Similarly, we could consider forming a new Canyon Lake Police Department. We could look at perhaps a small number of sworn officers and then have community service officers who can take desk reports, which is really the vast majority of activity that we're looking at here in Canyon Lake. We could also have a robust volunteer program. This might make sense when you look at, again, the types of calls that we typically see here. This line here is violent crime, so in 2018 we had a total of only 10 violent crimes in the whole city. 9 of them were assaults, and talking to Lieutenant Sims, almost all of these, if not all of these, were domestic disturbance calls. And then, a lot of these crimes are kind of teenage-related. Car was unlocked and someone opened the door and took something out of it. So we just don't see a whole lot of serious violent crime within the city of Canyon Lake. Another option would be to identify ways to boost revenue. The top 4 revenue producers for the city of Canyon Lake are utility users tax. We're projecting that to be a little over $1 million next fiscal year. Property taxes at $895,000. The fire structure fee at a little over $1 million. And the VLF swap, which is property tax money now, which is just under $1 million. So one of the things we could look at is an increase to the UUT. We're at 3.95% still, which is considerably lower than many of our surrounding communities who are anywhere from 6 to 8%. We could look at a special tax designated to public safety. We could look at forming a fire protection district. Many cities, including Murrieta, have fire protection districts. They're usually funded by parcel taxes. We could look at some sort of partnership with the POA. I suspect that will be a major point of discussion this evening. And long-term economic development opportunities. We're somewhat limited here because we have very little room to expand, very little room to develop. However, we are actively working with the BLM in hopes of exploring opportunities with the BLM land, and a few other specific locations where we think there might be opportunity. But economic development opportunities are limited here, and of course they take time. And that is about all I had in terms of a brief overview of where we are with public safety and the funding for it.
Well, thank you, Mr. City Manager. I think that the city has hogged some of this long enough. I'm going to turn it over to President Welty now and let him conduct some of this meeting.
Okay, I think at this point I'll turn to Eric. You have a presentation to do on the, Corey does.
Good evening. Yes. My name is Corey Gorham. I'm the Senior Member Services Manager for the association. My main responsibility is to oversee the Community Patrol contract for the association. So today I've prepared a brief PowerPoint. I'm going to cover what the contract covers, as well as go through a fiscal year budget review. After that, I'm going to turn it over to Art Alan Castro, who is our branch manager, and Bill Jordan, who is our on-site account manager, who will go into more details of our accounts specifically. Okay, so in December of 2017, the association signed a 3-year contract with U.S. Security. In February of this year, the U.S. Security was bought out by Allied Universal, and so now we are with Allied Universal. The services provided in this contract include 24/7 gate attendance at the major entrances. That would be the main gate, east gate, and north gate. We have 24/7 road patrol. During the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., we have 3 vehicles on the streets. During the hours of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., we have 4 vehicles. We also have a 24/7 dispatch service. We always have a shift supervisor on site. And Patrol also provides guest call-in service for all hours outside of member services business hours. Additional services include, again to my left, we have Bill Jordan. He's our on-site account manager. He's here Monday through Friday. We also have a patrol captain. Her name is Nanette Sikairos. She is here Thursday through Sunday. There's Marine Patrol, and Allied also provides event staffing for all of our major events that include Fiesta Day, July 4th, the car show, the POA concerts, Taco Tuesdays, etc. Okay, moving on to a financial overview. What I have here is the current fiscal year and the last 2 fiscal years. I've outlined the budgeted amount for the community patrol contract as well as the actual amount, and I've identified a variance within those years. As most of you will see, the contract is well over $2 million. For fiscal year 2017-2018, it was budgeted at 2.2. Actual expense came in at 2.1. There was a $105,000 variance there. The primary reason for the variance is we have made some staffing changes or some model changes to the patrol contract, which include things to eliminate costs as well as improve services. So, for example, in February of 2018, we eliminated the call center position that was open from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. We just found that call volume wasn't there, and we felt that our dispatch could handle that service, so that position was eliminated. In March of 2018, we eliminated the main gate decal lane graveyard shift. That is from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Traffic volume just wasn't there that required an additional guard to manage the decaling. In June 2018, after working with the Security Advisory Committee, we found that our road patrol was spending close to half of their shift conducting breaks and lunches for themselves and the gate staff. So in June of 2018, we added a breaker that would cover the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And with that, we added an additional vehicle so that they could get around, which would free up our road patrol to be on the roads more. In February of 2019, just a few months ago, we added a 4th road patrol that was on the graveyard shift. That occurred after a conversation that we had with Lieutenant Sims, who said most of the crime that occurs is happening, it's theft related, and it's happening during the night. When he looked at his service calls, he found that a lot of the theft-related service calls were being taken in the morning when people woke up and found out that things were missing. So we made the decision to add the 4th Road Patrol to increase visibility on the streets and hopefully deter some of this theft that's going on. And then most recently, just last month, we made the move to bring the Marine Patrol Captain position in-house. So with that wraps up my part of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Art here, who's going to go into more detail regarding Allied Universal, the contract positions and hours, and their reporting software.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Arturo Lancastro. I am the Director of Operations for Allied Universal. So I'll go ahead and go over a brief overview. So as Corey mentioned before, we were U.S. Security when the original contract started. Allied Universal purchased us to become Allied Universal as of February of this year. With that, I kind of give you guys a brief overview of who Allied Universal is. They've been around since 1957. With them, we've been able to increase our footprint in terms of resources, training, their command center, and just different services. They're not just a security provider. They provide janitorial service, security system, staffing services. So they do a little bit of everything. So just in general, our branch is dedicated to the security service. So I took the objective from the actual contract in itself. So Community Patrol's objective is to provide gate attendant, a call center, as well as community and Marine Patrol services within the properties and amenities of the association. Included but not limited to reporting to appropriate law enforcement and governmental authorities and to the association. It kind of goes on and on, but at the end of the day, like I said, this is strictly from the contract. our objective and what we're supposed to do for the community here. What Bill and I did was break down the exact hours by position along with how many SPs being security professionals that are provided for each of these services. So as you can see at the top, we got the account manager, which is Bill. He's a salary position, but in terms of how we bill him, it's a 40-hour position. The main gate, we have 280 hours or 7 security professionals. That's what it takes to cover that position. And then if we go down all the way to the bottom, I know we have a total of 2,269.5 hours, which equates to about 59 security professionals that we have on staff. So that's 59 professionals that we have trained across the entire contract. And then what we've recently done is we've actually increased that. So in order to kind of cover some of the call-offs, special events, any details that we have outside the normal contract, we've also added an extra 15 flex officers to the staff. That Jordan, would you say that they're all trained across the entire contract at this point? Yes, for the majority? Okay. So those 15 professionals can cover each of those positions, with the exception of the account manager and the assistant account manager. They can cover any of these positions that we have in the contract. So just a brief overview of what each position does. Our account manager here, he oversees the account. He's your point of contact. He's the go-to guy if you have any complaints, issues. He's the buffer that I have in between myself and Corey to kind of help mitigate some of the concerns. We have our captain, who is Nanette. She manages the day-to-day operations, kind of the right-hand person to Bill, trying to delegate some of those actual tasks that he has day in and day out. Our shift supervisors are out there to ensure compliance, so they're out there making sure they're checking the gates. If Bill gets a call from a resident, he can send the shift supervisor to go and inspect what we expect. Our road patrol, they're out there patrolling the community. They're out there enforcing policies. They're out there, for some of you members, issuing those citations that you get. But they're out there visible, and as Corey said, we've increased that based on our metrics that I'll go over in a few. Marine Patrol, they're out there on the lake during certain hours. As you guys could kind of go back if we went on the actual hours. During the summer months, Corey and the POA have decided to increase our hours. So right now during the summer months, we do have 280 hours or 7 security professionals. During our standard winter hours that we call, it's 160 hours. So we only have 4 Marine Patrol officers out on the lake. Our gate attendants, they're your access control. They're, I know, our biggest pet peeve and what we've been trying to work on with the improved training. So they're out there checking the decals, and I'd like to talk to that gentleman that brought up the concerns a few minutes ago. Our dispatchers, they're out there looking at cameras, monitoring what's going on in the community, as well as dispatching our officers out to these service calls. And the last component that we've added, you guys have seen them at maybe Taco Tuesday, Fiesta Day. They're the officers in the green team shirts or the green shirts. They're out there that we bring them in from the outside of the community. There are officers that we have trained in crowd control. They're there to kind of help us for these major events that are trained and have done this in the past. So one of the things that I know that they had asked us was to kind of what our relationship is with the police department and RSO. Jordan's more of the person that actually works with the RSO officers and the lieutenants to kind of see what's going on in the community, where are the hot buttons, what he can do to assist them. But like we've told the residents, if it's an emergency, call 911, don't call us, maybe get us involved after so that we can assist. Jordan will dispatch the field officers to assist with crowd control, with traffic, with whatever the police department may need from us on that part. 2 separate entities, but they do work hand in hand. I know they do the shift change there at Bluebird, so that's how they work in correlation. I mean, Jordan, do you have anything else to add to that? No? Okay. Now here's what's allowed us to either reduce or add coverage. Allied Universal has a program called Helios. Helios is you guys will see the officers at the guard check in a red cell phone. That red cell phone is providing us data. So the officers, when they issue a citation or they go out and do an incident report or do a nuisance complaint visit, whatever type of violation visit, anything that they may do regarding the POA is inputted into this system. What this system does, it provides us metrics, it provides us hot buttons, it provides us locations of where these incidents are taking place so that we can then take action, be proactive, and actually be out there in the right location at the right time. Also helps us drive the speed trailers so that we know, okay, if we're getting 50 tickets at Village and whatever location it may be, we then can place the speed trailer there and increase those traffic violations. So that's just kind of a brief overview. It gives you from the beginning of the year to this current month of where we stand in terms of violations or anything that we've inputted into the system. As you can see, just to kind of point out, parking violations or citations, 397 violations. That's just only a piece of the actual pie, and then everything else is broken down on the left. I know one of the biggest issues is accountability. So what this graph shows you is each officer broken down in the 24-hour period. Each of these points is showing you exactly what the officer is inputting into the system and what exactly is being done. So it helps Jordan, it helps Corey, it helps us all look into the Helios system to see exactly what's being done on a day-to-day basis, and that kind of just gives you the activity for a 24-hour period. This is similar to the other graph that I just showed you, except that this shows you a 24-hour period, that same information on the actual Canyon Lake property. So each of those devices is GPS coordinated, so when they put a major incident, they're required to put it at the location that they're at, so that we can then determine, okay, do we need extra patrols on the south side, north side? Where do we need to increase our presence? And this helps Jordan and Nanette get a visualization of exactly where we are needed in the community. And then last, just a couple things that we see come across our desk. So I know that one of the biggest concerns is how do we get people into the community a little quicker. Corey and Eric have assisted us with activating the mobile pass. Works wonders, so highly recommend that for any visitors you may be coming for the 4th of July. Helps speed up the process for them and for the actual SPs at the gate. If you need your boat checked during the summer months, we suggest call the Marine Patrol in advance. It helps them plan out their day, and it helps them get you on the schedule so that they can get you taken care of quickly. If you're having issues with a loud neighbor and you don't want them to either find out or don't want to cause any issues, give us a call, let us know, and we'll send a community patrol officer out there to assist with that. And last but not least, if you those decal lanes, try the RFIDs. I know they're getting better. They're making it a lot quicker and expediting the process for you at the gate. So just a couple tips for you, and that's all I got. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Chris and Eric, I guess we're going to talk about joint future projects. That's the next thing. Chris? You're done? POA presentation's over? Okay, so we'll move on to Chris and Eric's discussion. I'm sure the board can engage too.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I don't have anything extra to add. I figured this would be the time when the council and the board could throw some ideas around.
Okay. Any of the councilmen want to discuss the projects, any recommendations, suggestions on how we can work together? The fire and safety is primarily the role of the city. We do patrol, which is safety, but it's primarily the role of the city. So, I mean, we as the board obviously are concerned about the community, and we want to be able to work together. I think working together we can provide a much higher level of service to the community. So if anything we can do that you think we can help you with, if you want to let us know, we'll listen. We can't necessarily do everything, but we can do our best to work together.
Well, thank you. And it seems to be working just fine right now. There's always room for improvement, of course, but I don't know what that is, but I would certainly like to hear from the rest of the council. And I just wanted to tell the public that with all the various comments that they had, we are not allowed to, maybe allowed isn't the proper word, we don't respond to what it is that you have to tell us, whether you're praising us or complaining. Either way, we're not supposed to respond. The POA operates perhaps under a different set of rules, but as a city, so I don't want anybody to be upset that we didn't respond. Certainly, I think both Dale and I and all of the council and all of the board members have heard all of your concerns, and we certainly would be happy, I think, to discuss those perhaps at a future meeting. And that may be something that we should have more of an open forum type meeting the next meeting, so that we can discuss openly and answer whatever questions that you have, because we don't want you to think that we've ignored you. But does council have any comments?
I just want to make a positive comment that the format this time was more closer to the round table, and we're looking at each other and talking to each other versus being spread apart last time. So thank you for recognizing that this format is a better way to talk to each other. So thank you very much.
I guess I'll add, I know a lot has been said lately about the fire contract. I do want the residents to know that we are at all times still working on the police contract, and that is something that I have taken particular interest in. We're looking at potentially, I guess I'll back up. We've had conversations with the department. We're housed out of the Paris station. The deputies that come to Canyon Lake start in Paris, come to Canyon Lake, and then return to Paris at the end of every shift. We do have the, Canyon Lake satellite office in our town center, which is primarily used as almost like a hub for the deputies who have, the deputy who is assigned to Canyon Lake. We've had specific conversations with the lieutenant asking that deputies not just hang out in that office, that they are visible, that if they're going to park somewhere, that they're parking where there are school buses or where they will be a speed deterrent. Obviously, we are in a private community, so there are issues with private property and what enforcement action the sheriff's department can take. I've spoken specifically to not our current city manager, but city attorney, about potentially combining security and police services. I know that your contract is pretty expensive. Obviously, our expenses are out of control. Given government code regulations, that's not necessarily just something we can do. We've talked about potentially looking at spot legislation to fix that, because we are a small community, and we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach the way other cities do with these contracts. We have a lot of community interest. Jeremy and I are tagged in posts all the time on Facebook about incidents that go on in Canyon Lake, and we do try and get back to those residents, or do try and reach out to code enforcement or whoever is the appropriate group to get answers and return those. But again, any information that you as citizens have that can assist us in this process would be always welcomed. We have had meetings with the sheriff's department. I know that our city manager is continuing those conversations. And in some ways, it does appear like we may have just a complete uphill battle. But at the end of the day, if this is going to work for the city, it's going to become something that is creative and different, and probably not 100% popular with everyone. But what is going to be required is something that makes concessions so that we can keep our city safe. And I know that everyone has a specific opinion of what safe looks like, but I do want you to know that I know, speaking on behalf of our council, that we take it tremendously to heart to make sure that this is the best place to live.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Those of us that are in TV land or Facebook or wherever you're at, thank you for joining us on the second joint meeting. I want to thank the POA for coming out and helping. So there's a few things that I want to discuss tonight. A couple things going on with our paramedics, our AMR program. Kind of want an open dialogue between City Council and the POA board on a possibility of looking at some services with AMR. Also, maybe some ideas that you might have in regards to our future fire department, and lastly, our police contract along with your security contract. But first, before I go into that, I want to give a huge shout out to the POA staff and our city staff on putting together, I think, a phenomenal report. I think most of you agree with that. I think the agenda for this city council has been to be as transparent as possible, and I think that's exactly what we're trying to do with every city council meeting, every opportunity we get to be with the public, is to try to be as transparent and honest with everything that we're dealing with behind the closed doors. With that said, for years it's been a unique situation that we have with AMR being in Canyon Lake between two big thriving cities such as Lake Elsinore and Menifee, and we're blessed to have free services from AMR because it's what the county provides to Canyon Lake. For the first time, and Mr. Aaron Kranz, you can correct me on this, I think for the first time we've had conversations with AMR at the local level to see if they could possibly come inside the gates. And the issue with that has always been response times, because again, they're contracted with a public entity, which is the county, so they're required to provide service to both Menifee and Lake Elsinore along with Canyon Lake. So it was kind of, thought about, we don't know if we could do that. If we're inside the gates, we might not be able to get out quick enough. But interesting enough, the city manager and myself, we set up a tour and we had AMR come out and we showed them our beautiful community, and we showed them some different locations that could be a possibility to get them inside the gates. One of them being the senior center, one of them being Eastport. The thought is that the senior center would make more sense for them because of the location, but for us it's very difficult because it's, as most of you know, it's very tight already with the motorcycle, with the senior center, with the new games that we put in place. So that was kind of written off, and they said, well, the Eastport, if we could look at an option whether to build a station, maybe we can make it into a dispatch center for the community and allow AMR to have a location, a permanent location where they would always be, and then that way they can respond to both Lake Elsinore and Menifee. And this was a thought, and as we talked about it more and more, it became a reality if the POA would be willing to do something like that. And here's the thought, here's the plan. The plan of attack would be, maybe we look at building a station for AMR, and the beauty of that is that AMR is required to pay fair market rate. They're required to pay fair market value. They do so right now in the town center. It's just a difficult situation because it's not perfect for them. They would rather have more of a fire station kind of service area where they can get buses in and out quickly, where the guys can have a shower, where the guys have proper bunks, and the gals, a good location for them is kind of what they're struggling right now with the town center. As you know, those buses are parked in the parking lot amongst other cars. So this was very appealing to them, and if it means, making the sacrifice of coming inside the gates, which we benefit from, our response times decrease because of that. We now have a presence inside the community of having AMR part of our community day in and day out. My biggest caveat with this whole thing is I really don't want to miss out on the opportunity because of a logistical issue, because AMR will move and they will go to either Lake Elsinore or Menifee to find a better facility for them, for their operations. And I know that this board and this council is working diligently to provide the best public safety we possibly can for the community. And I think this is a way that we can do it that will not only bring a sense of income to the POA, because they would be required to pay rent on that building, but also we would get the crack at having them as responders in our community and be a part of it. So that's the first little conversation that I kind of wanted to throw out to the board, see if you had any questions to me and to Chris, because we've kind of been spearheading this project, and open up the dialogue before we then begin to talk about fire and police, if that's okay with you guys.
Thank you. If it appears I'm a little biased, you notice I let Councilman Smith speak a little longer than 3 minutes, but we're all supposed to contain our comments to 3 minutes. Anything from you, Katz? Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm sure that you'll give the board the same courtesy.
Okay, if anyone wants to time us, that's okay, we can cut us down. I think the concept of better service to the community is critical. The faster times, if someone has a medical emergency, we in my mind, we need to do whatever we can to get the people who can service the community there as quickly as possible. And again, it may make some changes. We talk about different locations and how it's going to impact people. I will guarantee you that before we make any decisions, we're going to meet with the people who are using whatever facilities, and we're going to talk to them and make sure that any concerns they would have would be met. So we're not going to run off willy-nilly and you're going to suddenly drive in and see some tower blocking your driveway. It'll be open and dialogue. But everyone, if there's anything everybody wants to do is to feel safe and feel that they have medical care. And if we can up that service and there's a little inconvenience, I think it's well worth it. So I think that there's a lot of detail to this. There's a lot of information need to be worked out. My feeling is that the staff and the board should look into this. There's hills to climb. There's issues we have to address. But at least at this point in time, I think we should go ahead and at least pursue what options we have. Obviously, we've heard safety and concerns and security concerns tonight, and you can feel the holes and the gaps of the service, and in order to fix those gaps in the service, we have to make changes. And I understand, but in the statement for the security company, it's been getting better every year. Every year, the complaints have been going. I hear it not heading, but head shaking. But I've seen the gradual improvement. We're going to continue along the lines of continual improvement. We have brought in the Marine captain inside so that we have somebody with more familiarity with the water. We're going to go through some RFID stuff so we can get more security at the gate. All that stuff is going to be ongoing. So we're hoping that if we can take some of the resources away from checking my mother into the gate, we can use those resources to patrol the streets. We can use those resources so the security guards who are letting in outside guests will make sure they have the time to check the ID properly. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at those changes and do our best to improve the level of service and seal some of the gaps. Again, we added another patrol out there at night. We are going to pursue those things and continue down that road. Anyone else?
It's real easy to say that we want to do everything that's possible. It's another thing to say we need to do things that are practical. The crime report that we received shows a very, very small number of crimes, most of which are nuisance to all of us. We don't like burglary, we don't like robbery. But when you consider that we're a community of 12 to 13,000 people and you look at these kind of numbers, you've got to ask yourself, how much more money are we willing to spend to try to get these numbers down even lower? And I think the same thing goes with the community patrol. Not to take away for a moment the great work that's being done. Don't get me wrong. The question is, what's practical for us to do? And if we continue to feed on the significance and the heartache that goes with small numbers, we're going to continue to want to try to make them smaller. But again, we've got to think about what's practical. I'm all in support of what you're talking about, Jeremy. I think it's a very, very interesting idea. I think that the details, the devil's in the details, of course. We've got to figure out if it's actually going to cost us money to do that, or if it's something that will be revenue neutral, which is great. Why would you do it if it was neutral? We've got to figure out just how it's going to impact our community. So I think it's important that we move forward with that. I have questions, but there doesn't appear that there's any place on the agenda to ask questions about the people that are presenting. So I hope that this meeting can mature to a point that we can go into dialogue about the stuff that's being presented to us. I'd love somebody to tell me how we compare to other communities our size in terms of police and fire. Is everybody having the same problem being able to afford their police and fire? And I know a lot of communities are. The communities that are not, what are they doing? I'd love to hear that kind of conversation.
I was just talking to the city manager, and we can have a dialogue. That's what I was looking for. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think as long as the dialogue sticks to what, the agendized item, which is fairly broad, it's public safety, and if we're exploring opportunities where we might work together on items of public safety, I think we're in the clear to have back and forth dialogue.
Okay, so we can do that. I'm on the edge of my 3 minutes, so I got to say something real quick. Another thing that I really hope we do, I think it's an easy thing that we could do, that we could work on maybe on the side, is trying to figure out how to streamline and create a single process for permitting construction around here. It seems to me that if I said it simply, I would say we shouldn't plan check until we have approval by the POA of our ACC process. But we need to get that thing squared away, and that's for future discussion. You're asking me what else? That's something else that I would like to see us tackle.
Thank you, Chris. I guess the only item that I can think of right now is, and I don't think it's a new item, but as Lake Elsinore continues to get more aggressive on their homelessness, it's pushing our boundaries a little bit, and I think the POA and the city need to begin to work together as to how we're going to be able to address some of that. So I think that would be a great topic for a future meeting. Thank you.
I want to thank Chris for his presentation on the finances of the city. I saw some earlier at the last meeting, but I don't think too many people in our community really realize what we are doing with a little bit of income that we do have. And I appreciate you looking at it and presenting it openly, and anything that we can do as a community to work together, I think is in all of our best interests. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. We have a much bigger crowd, I think, than last time, and looking forward to the future meetings where we get to discuss with the city and work together with the city and make our city a great place to be. Reminder that we have another workshop in 2 nights. We're going to be here Wednesday night talking about gate and RFID and just gate access. So if you have concerns specific to that conversation, please come down Wednesday. Thank you.
Does that complete the future project section? Are we all?
I'll make the suggestion. Moving forward, would the POA board be willing to have staff and yourselves meet with AMR to discuss what was brought before you just now?
I at least my support. Tom and I, we're kind of the council reps, right? That's the way it laid out. Tom, Nathan, you and I are kind of the liaisons of the council. I believe that was a decision. So, Tom, are you willing to get involved? Okay, so Tom and I are willing to step up, and if we can schedule a time to meet, and Eric obviously needs to be there, and maybe Eric and Lynn, but we're willing to meet.
My other comment would be, we only get to do this 4 times a year. So, the thought of tonight was a discussion between city, council, and POA. I would hate to just not utilize the time that we've set aside, to have these discussions. Would you guys be willing to also talk about fire tonight as well, on maybe some insights that you have on some of the concerns, maybe some of the history, and also police too, because, we don't want to not only waste your time, but, again, this is the second time this meeting's ever taken place. It's only going to happen 4 times a year. If we can, I would love to actually have a discussion between the two about some of your insights and your opinions and your histories of what is brought before us.
Is there a reason we can only have 4 a year, or could we have an emergency get together?
Yeah, I'm game for that too. It's just that's what was recommended in the beginning, was to do it once a quarter, quarterly, and to see how it rolls out. But my concern is now we're heavily into almost July now. This year I can't believe it, it's already July, and we've only met twice, and we got some, at least on our end, we have some serious precedent issues, and we're up against a huge clock right now, where we will be, pretty much out of business in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we can do with fire. Obviously, we own a building, we're providing it at a pretty good rate. Obviously, we're not going to get into the fire service business. I think none of the board members would like that, but if we can provide support, if there's some other things that you could use, let us know. I think, but and as far as police service falls with you guys. There's some discussion at times of doing a JPA and having our service join with yours, It seems like a complicated road, but I think, as you just said, we can't meet once a quarter and get down that road very far. So again, Tom and I are the liaisons, and we can meet with you guys and work out some of the issues. Well, hopefully what we would come up is we would talk about the questions we need to address here. And if we could build a list of questions, and then when we come here, we could say, here's the questions, and then the community could hear what the questions are. I think that would be something that I would work with. Tom says he'll work with it. I'm sure the staff will work with it. So if you want to consider something like that, we've talked about JPAs, and to be honest, I think time is the biggest problem. We have a discussion once a month, and next month comes up, and we haven't moved ahead like I would hope. So if it takes these subcommittee meetings, I'm good.
I'm still concerned that we're not structuring our time together that allows for creative discussion. And I like the tables in a U, though I still can't see most of the people. And I still feel like the presentations that were given tonight were intended to inform the community, which is fine. That's a nice thing to do. It's an important thing to do. But we need to talk. We need to talk about concrete ideas. You threw some ideas out during the kind of a general agenda item. Those are good ideas. I don't know how we go about getting this to where we can talk about it, whether we start to just brainstorm and move through this, or whether smaller groups of people can get together and bring forward some concrete ideas, answer some questions. I don't know. We need to move forward from the reporting to the community format.
And I think it's stated, if we need to do more of these meetings, we can. I think some getting together and finding the questions we need to bring up in the meeting, I think is kind of critical. Bringing out the options for these meetings to, extend our presentation to the community would be great. But yeah, we can do that.
From what I'm hearing, I think we need to be able to flex the rules a little bit. The people that came up and spoke tonight, some were POA problems, some were city problems, but none of them got an answer from us. And I think they came here to get more information than just to hear us talk. And if there's some way that we can have just an open forum or let the people come, we don't want it to get out of hand and the same subject being repeated. But I think that in the future, we should be able to answer these people with what their concerns are. And I'm going to be the first one to break a rule. Not the first time, but first one tonight. I think Mr. Whittle has left, and he presented a document here of several pages of frustration for the last 8 or 9 months. I happen to live at the end of the racetrack that he's referring to, and I know that all the people in my neighborhood, across the street, up the street, all would like to see something done to slow down the traffic at that particular spot. I mean, it is a racetrack. I can't get out of my driveway most of the time, safely that is. So I'm sorry if I did what I said we're not supposed to do, but I encourage Mr. Whittle to call me, please, personally, and I will be happy to discuss the situation with him and see what I can do to fix it.
Jordan, I really appreciate what you said, and I agree with you, but I think that when we get a body of public comments, and they're all valid, that we need to decide which ones belong to the city, which ones belong to the POA, and which ones we need to work on together.
I believe that's what I was...
You all have your meetings and a forum to work on those things that are yours. We have the same thing to work on that are ours. I would hope that this information that was given to us, that we would do that, and we would start to gather the things that we need to work on together.
I guess my comment is that we want to encourage the people to report things to the POA. Sometimes it seems like we don't do anything about the information, but my impression from the inside is that we do things about it. We hear about the raceway. We have trailers with radar on them. I'm sure that Eric can look into whether or not we can place the trailers in that area if it is a high-speed area. So Eric says we do. Now that it's a bigger problem, maybe we do it more. But the opportunity for us to hear what's going on is really a good thing. I do know that when Bill gets a call and Corey gets a call, that they do think about how to fix things, and they do make some changes. So I'm sorry, so sorry it appears that we don't move quickly and we don't do much, but the reality is these two guys, I believe they do react with the resources they have. We'll talk about the noise problems on the lake. We used to have noise problems down at the tennis court, and I'll tell you what it took. It took, when they got a little bit loud, it took somebody to call the POA. It took somebody to call the POA 10 minutes later. It took somebody to call the police. And eventually, we went from a crowd of 50 making all sorts of crazy noises to a crowd of maybe 15 that were pretty quiet. So if you can pursue the phone calls, we'll put a plan in place. If it means going down and checking alcohol consumption by the sheriff, I'm sure the city would be happy to comply. If it's a noise violation or it's a bad language violation, I think both of us have rules about that. And if we're informed, it gets tracked, and Corey and Bill can look at it, and we can put an action plan in place. And again, the big success story I had was the tennis courts, when it used to be just absolutely insane down there. But we pursued the POA, and the POA pursued the solution.
Can I make another comment? Do you mind?
Sure.
Okay. I would like to echo what Councilman Smith is saying. The way I'm looking at this, like Mr. Poland mentioned, our stats are relatively low for public safety issues in terms of crime. Our crimes are not violent crimes. Of course, occasionally, yes. But we have a serious budget problem with the cost. And I know that mention is made oftentimes that the POA is raising dues or the POA is paying too much for security. Is there not some way that both groups can come together and meet the objective where we are joining forces? Because it seems like there's a lot of overlap, but not a lot is getting accomplished. I know that the POA contributes when there are big events like 4th of July and tree lighting to an extra deputy, and we're grateful for that cost splitting. Is there not a way that we can do that year round? Can we work on that? Really, that would be amazing.
I can answer that. I think the first step to this whole conversation is pursuing a JPA. The city has certain insurance protections as a public agency that we don't. There's a lot of liability in perceived duties, and when we cross that boundary into public safety, we're a private corporation. And so honestly, to do a lot of these things we're talking about, the first thing we should do is fast track pursue a JPA so that we can work together, because if we enter into the public safety business as a private corporation, we have now created a perception that we're liable for public safety, which as a private corporation we really aren't, and we can't really even buy insurance protections for that. If we had a JPA, we can certainly piggyback on the city's public agency protections, and so I think really that's kind of step one of this whole thing. So I think we ought to have conversations about that. I think you guys, if I'm not wrong, I think the city is now receptive to that. It's been talked about for years. I'm not sure. I think in the past it was talked about and rejected, and really the ball never moved forward. I think this is probably the time to move that ball forward. There's probably a lot of pluses to that. And then just back on topic, I have a question as far as the AMR proposal. Did I hear you right that instead of the senior center, which has some limited space, that AMR is now entertaining the idea of renting some space for some sort of modular office / living quarters somewhere else, like Eastport?
So essentially, the perfect scenario would be to build a station for them, obviously, because we want to meet certain architectural qualifications, but I don't think most of the community members would want a module just dropped off. It would look, might I say, tacky, right? But if we were looking at ways to build them a facility, then they would be more inclined to do so. If it was, building a facility as opposed to just dropping something, they would look at that, especially if we can look at ways to where maybe they wouldn't even have to go through the gates. If they could go through, the back, right onto Gotts or wherever that might be, we could talk down the road, obviously. But yes, they've switched their minds in that regards if the facility outweighs, what they're dealing with right now. And that's going to be a huge benefactor for them. So, yes.
Well, one major thing that goes with the AMR is response time, because that's they get measured by that. Okay, so they got to get to Railroad Canyon Road or Gulch Road to Railroad Canyon in a reasonably 2 or 3 minutes. They're okay, but if it's in the middle of the city, they're going to have a problem.
Yeah, that's already been discussed. Obviously, they can't service the outside cities from the middle of the community. That would be awesome on our end. But you're right. I don't make their qualifications. That's something that AMR does internally. So if they can look at me and say we can get to our clients, their customers from that location, then I'll take them for that. The bigger thing for us is our entire goal through this whole thing is to get them inside the community and to push forward the relationship also, but to bring them on and say, hey, look, we're creating a facility that is so good you don't want to leave. And that's where I think we're really at with this. I don't want them to go, selfishly, I don't want them to go to Lake Elsinore. I don't want them to go to Menifee. I want them to stay right here in our home. And that's what we're fighting for. So, we've come a long ways with that relationship, and, that's kind of where we're at right now. So the big thing moving forward would be to have a couple board members and AMR sit down and see if it's a possibility, if their qualifications for the building specs make sense. This isn't the first rodeo. They've been servicing Riverside County for as long as, years. So they've been with them forever. So they've done multiple things like this before. I will say this, though, talking to my colleagues in other cities, this is a direction that other cities are starting to look at too. Now that we have medical versus, more medical calls than anything else, they're starting to create programs that identify the needs and wants of their community, which is more medical driven. So these type of pilot programs is what AMR would call them, is something that, they want to see not only if we build them a station, but also looking at a possibility of doing a subcontract with them at Station 60. So these are some of the things that we're having discussion on, but we meet a certain point where we need your help, obviously. We can't move forward without your guys' help and your insight and, what you can offer.
Just want to comment about that. If we make a commitment to a building, whether it's a modular or real building, this is for the community. Yes, we would. There's a chance we will spend POA funds on this facility, but the reality is that we will get a return on investment. Well, we can spend capital improvements on parks and beaches and some other things. We don't get any money back. We do spend money on the restaurants doing improvements because we do get a return by more people coming. We did put money in the docks because we got a return on investment. We put money in the docks at 7 years, they pay for themselves, and then we continue to get that cash flow into the community to offset dues. So if we were out to do a building for this, besides just providing the service, we would look at a return on investment. So at some point that the community would get income and it would offset the dues. So, if we can get we have funds in the bank for reserve, and we because of the limits of the safety, we don't earn a lot of interest. If we can build a building and get a return of 10%, boy, that would be just amazing for this community. So again, if you see funds going for a building, we're not throwing money into a hole. We're investing to reduce dues and to provide better service. So just kind of a heads up on if we do spend any money, we will get a return.
And you bring up a good point. I failed to mention this. When I sat down with AMR originally to look at putting together a program like this, the thought was, well, hey, maybe we can, give you a discount or something like that. They said, no, absolutely not. In fact, it's in our contract with the county that we have to pay fair market rate, no matter what. So you can't even offer them a discount. They have to pay full boat for what that building that we would make for them. In my mind, I'm thinking we'll make them sign a lease until the thing's paid off. It's just that simple, right? So if it's a 10-year lease, if it's a 15-year lease, make them sign that, and then, we for sure get that building paid for, and it's not a financial strain on the POA. That's just my thoughts.
Jeremy, in the shorter term, are they still entertaining the idea of a modular temporary facility at any location? Because the space for that modular unit could be rented and drawing income right away. I gather there was some sense of urgency that they're thinking about relocating, and a building could take a year or more.
Right.
So I'm curious if that's still an option.
Yeah, I reached out to them with that specific question. They said, we've actually done modules before in different satellite locations when they're needed in certain disaster areas and stuff, so I know they have something, to that detail. That would be, I think, a really good conversation. Say, hey, look, we want to carve out this place, we'll build you something here, but for now we want to get you inside, get you comfortable, to sustain the relationship, to build the relationship, and to keep them. I think that's a great idea.
I have a hunch that there's a short time frame on all this, if they're interested in getting out of what they're doing right now. So I don't think we have a lot of years to work on this. It strikes me that we ought to be moving down parallel paths. You'd probably do this anyway, but there needs to, Eastport sounds like a really good opportunity. There needs to be some master planning for the Eastport area. I'm not a fan of that modular building we have over in Eastport right now. It'd be nice if it could be remodeled, dolled up, turned into what they need. Seems like it's a nice place to have the buses. It'd have to be reworked somehow. And then if we need to create another space for meeting, then we can think about doing that. But there needs to be some master planning to go on about how to use our Eastport area, because it's going to be for a long time. We got to figure out the zoning, whether there's any zoning issues in all of this sort of thing. But there's got to be a business model in here for us, because like I said, I think this thing needs to pay for itself over the long term. And so somebody's got to be worrying about that community, that sort of thing. And the last thing is that we really need to listen carefully to our community and make sure that they are comfortable with this notion that we're going to start, this will be a first step for us, bringing a commercial activity inside our gates. And I happen to think that's a great idea. It's economic development, it's more revenue for us. It's a way to finance the future of this community. But I think that we've got to really tackle that issue along with everything else.
If there's no further comments from the City Council, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank everybody that came here tonight. I hope that it was something that everybody was looking forward to. I know I certainly was. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the city's portion of this meeting at 7:48.
Does any of the board members have anything else to add to this? We're all good? Okay. Well, we will get together and we'll get together the agendas, and we'll get to, for the future meetings, and we'll put all that together, and we will get together with Tom and I and AMR, and we'll see what we can pursue. So at this time, is there a motion for the POA to close the meeting? To adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we are. 7:49, Harmony.